And we're talking today to Karen Hinds. And you, to me, are the example of somebody that everybody needs to carry around in their pocket.
Wow.
Because what you have done with your life and the way you show people to empower their lives is amazing. Let's start with your story.
Sure.
You are from St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Yes.
Now, most people would say, where
on earth is
where
that?
is that on the map?
Exactly.
Tell me how you got to Connecticut.
Sure. My parents moved the entire family when I was 15 years old to Boston, and I'm from the most beautiful island in the Caribbean.
You have to say that, though.
Of course I have. All the Caribbean islands are beautiful, but I'm a little biased. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and we're Eastern Caribbean right next to Barbados, so go all the way down the chain of islands. And we came here for educational reasons. My parents wanted to have the 4 children who came to a better future. And one of the ways to do that was to go to college and be exposed to the American dream, so to speak.
How tough was it to come to this country at the age of 15?
It was difficult, considering I had 1 year left of high school. When I left the Caribbean, I had 1 year left of high school. When I came to the U.S., I had to start all over again because we're in a different system. We have a British system in the Caribbean. In America, it's 9th to 12th grade. So it felt like doing high school all over again, even though I was 15 with 1 year left to go. So that was one of the biggest adjustments, I would say, as well as all the other cultural adjustments, getting used to not having the same courtesies like we do in the Caribbean here in the U.S., not being able to have that support and community like we do in the Caribbean. So that was a very big adjustment for me, and it caused a lot of pain.
Let's talk about that.
Ah.
What are some of the examples? What are some of the things that happened to you so that others might learn from you how to go forward when they are from another country settling in America?
Sure. I think, first of all, my parents did not believe in buying brand name clothing. So when you're 15 years old and you want to fit in, you want to you want to be in the best clothing, you want to be in the latest of garbs, and my parents were not having that. They believed in being very conservative, very frugal, and buying what was practical. So no flashy brand names. You know, the hairstyles were different, and a lot of people made fun of my accent, which, by the way, right now I celebrate because it is who I am, and it is what makes me who I am. So those are the things that people made fun of then. It was very difficult. As a teenager, you're trying to fit in, and you're not able to do that because the things that were normal in another island here in the U.S. is very different and very frustrating. So I felt very ostracized.
How did you cope, or did you not, in those really early years?
In the early years, I wasn't quite sure what to do. So I spoke to my siblings. There were 4 of us, so we had a lot of talks with them. But also, I had other immigrants who were coming through the same process, who were teenagers, and we would often talk about what home used to be like. So that was where I found support and comfort. And it was also my way of holding on to who I was at the time. I didn't want to lose that at all, because as much as I was excited to be in the U.S., I didn't want to assimilate so much because I didn't want to lose my heritage and my culture. That was very important to me.
So going forward, you graduate from high school, you go to college. Now, everything somebody tells you to do, you kind of did something else because you start to find who Karen is.
Yes, yes.
Talk to me about that.
First of all, I went to Bowdoin College in Brunswick, Maine. You'd figure a Caribbean girl going up north to Maine.
Froze.
What on earth were you thinking? But I really loved the way the college looked. It felt like my ideal picture of a college and the support that I got when I visited. So I went to Bowdoin, which is in Brunswick, Maine, and it was tough at the time being one of the only black West Indians in my first year. And then after, years after that, we had others coming. But that was a very interesting experience. And when I graduated, instead of going and get a job, I got the IBM fellowship, which is, it's called a Watson Foundation Fellowship.
So you showed them, didn't you?
Yeah, I figured, what, I'm going to blaze my own trail. You're supposed to get a job. Go to college and then get a job. I said no. I applied for the fellowship. It was one of 65 throughout the country awarded that year, and I got one. I won one. And I traveled back to the Caribbean for a year looking at politics and music and how that impacts the region. So did a little bit of a different spin, and then came back and then started working. But I took a year off to revisit and look at what was important to me.
So jobs, how did we start into the job force and what did you do?
I got a position working at one of the universities in Boston, and that led to networking, of course. Someone introduced me to another position working at a high school, and quickly realized the job that I was hired for was to teach young people how to be successful in the workplace. Now, mind you, I still haven't gotten used to the American culture. And
so you're still not that comfortable
I'm still not
yourself.
Exactly. So here am I supposed to teach young teenagers how to make this process work, and I have no clue myself. But after a number of years of doing research and learning on the job and getting educated about the process, I decided to quit the job after a few years and start a business.
So you talk a lot, and you have self-published 5 books. You talk about the power of distinction. How did you come up with that, and what does that mean? The
power of distinction, that is a person's ability to, first of all, recognize that they're different and to celebrate their difference. But also, it's the power of distinction is made of 7 strategies. We call them 7 master strategies to help people excel personally and professionally. The goal is not to teach people to be like everybody else. The goal is to look at how do you stand out from everybody else and using that to move up. So you can move up in your personal life, you can move up in your professional life, but the goal is how do I stand out? And we're teaching our young professionals, we're teaching old professionals, seasoned professionals, how to be like everybody else, and we don't want that. So the more stand out, the more different you are, I should say, the better your chances are for success.
How do you find out who you are in order to cut through the clutter and use the power of distinction?
First of all, I think we need to go back to having what's called thinking time. People forget to think. We've gotten so used to going and being in this mode of always having somebody teach us and being bombarded. And finding out who you are and where your power lies, start with you first. Looking inside, looking at what are your natural talents, looking at are you honoring and respecting family, taking a deep look at what are your personal policies and procedures. Those are the first 3 strategies. So making an examination of sorts of who you are, where you want to be, because you can't look at professional or even personal success without knowing who you are.
You really want to empower women.
Yes, I want to empower women, young professionals.
And how did you set on that path? Because of what happened to you, do you think?
I think my everyday job is to look, I'm a consultant, and to work in different corporate and educational institutions, and I saw that women were getting lost. And it's important for women to understand what they bring to the table. It's important for them to know how powerful they are, but not to try and be Superwoman. I really believe that Superwoman is not attainable.
What do women bring to the table? In particular, this table.
This table. I think
do they not understand the power that they
have?
They
don't understand the power because they're trying to be like men, and we don't need to do that. I think as women, we shape the world in different ways. Some shape the world by being at home and taking care of the family. Some shape the world by being out in the marketplace. But understand what works for you, and don't try to have it all at one time, because that's not possible if you plan to be effective, but also being very spiritually grounded, being grounded in who they are and knowing what their beliefs are. That's very important for women because that's where we get our substance from.
How do you teach a young woman passion? How do you teach them how to find what they're passionate about, to find that and go forward?
Try different things. We don't always know what we're good at unless we're exposed to something, unless someone introduces us to something and we try something different. So try something different. Talk to a mentor. Find somebody who's a little bit more experienced. Notice I didn't say older. More experienced in a different...
Why did you not say older?
Because people think mentors have to be older. You're just looking for someone who has more experience in an area than you do. So find someone with more experience and learn from them. And then in that way you'll figure, you know what, I don't like that. I love that. So for me, I know that there are certain things I really don't like. You cannot stick me behind a desk and expect me not to have contact with people. I would lose it. That's not how I'm built. For me, it's important to be interactive and meet with people. That's where I shine. That's where I bring my best out. So that's how a young woman could start. First of all, taking the time to look into who she is by having some thinking time, sitting down and journaling, looking at that. but also gaining from the wisdom of other people who are around her, from the other women who've gone before her.
But you need to do your homework.
Of
This is not going
course.
to come to you.
This is not going to happen overnight. So I'm not going to go home tonight and tomorrow morning I wake up, if I'm a young woman, and figure out, I know exactly what I want to be now because Karen said it. That's not happening. It's a journey, it's a process. And in that process, you discover who you are. In that process, you discover what you're really good about. In that process, you also understand what you stand for, what you will tolerate, and what you would absolutely not tolerate.
And you stay on message. I've heard that before. You have some big goals. I mean, it seems to me you've always had big goals, but you want to do some really neat things
Yes.
back on your island.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, we have a conference coming up in 2013. It's
Your
called
first.
conference is called Phenomenal Woman, and the idea is to begin to not only empower Caribbean women, but also extend an invitation to women here in the U.S., the U.K., and Canada to come down to the Caribbean and meet some other women, but also do that from a place where you can learn, how can I be a better person? How can I use my spiritual backbone to really move forward? So we're doing that next year, but I also want to own a hotel.
Now tell me about that, because you and I have talked just briefly about, I want to build a hotel
Yes.
on my island. Where
Yes.
does that come from?
Since I was 18 years old, I want to own a hotel. I love the hospitality industry. And my island is a beautiful island, and it's an opportunity to showcase that. But in owning a hotel, it's a conference center as well, so people can come down, do our conferences, come to our workshops, and hey, throw in a vacation at the same time and discover a beautiful part of the world.
What do you hope to grow this global conference into as it goes forward?
I see this as an opportunity where women can come from different parts of the world, not just the Caribbean, but the UK, Africa, Asia, come to a warm part of the world, get themselves immersed in what's really important, get back to the heart of who they are, and be led from there. That's what I hope it would be, so that you can come and know that you're getting good spiritual food for your mind, body, and soul, and for your appetite, because we have great food.
Connecticut is so lucky to have you, Karen Hinds.
Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you
glad to be
for
here.
imparting some of your wisdom and going through some rough spots, but just figuring it out.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.